So I don't know who else has looked into Mantak Chia a lot. I remember I used to read a bunch of his books and I really learned a lot from him. So I think it's a great resource to go into. But he's got these levels that I vaguely remember, and I looked up the levels. And the first level, like levels of his system, right? The first level was the microcosmic orbit, which was like circulating energy and focused through like the spine meridian and the front meridian, right, of the body. And I think maybe also he did like lower dantian work or something. And then the second one was the sexual alchemy practices. Or here we go, we are working with Jing and all that, and like learning to refine those and such. And then it was fusion of the five elements, and then he's got other, like Khan and Lee, and then it's like the mental ones, the Ascension based ones. But every like system usually has levels, right? If you look at like Mopai, it's Dantian, then it's root or the Yin root, and it's like fusing them. And if you look at like Wuxia manga, which is kind of like a comics and stories, or book novels and all that, games nowadays, they usually have Dantian, or they have the body, right? Like training the physical body first, physical exercise, they call it body refinement. That's why they're standing in whole stance and they're like focusing on their muscles and bones. I mean, that actually works. If you want to, well, it's not an easy exercise, but if you want a whole body exercise, you stand in whole stance and you kind of push out and like feel your whole body, like the physical body, and just fill it full of blood. And it's like, you'll just be like, wow, why do I feel so good? Like once you recover from it, like the next day, it's like, wow, why do I have so much more stamina? Like, what's going on? It's pretty good. But then so it's like Dantian, or physical body, Dantian, then it's the root, um, building the foundation establishment, and then it's like core formation. And the core formation is always like the middle level. If you've looked up that other ranking, it's like related to Earth Immortal, I guess. And it's like nascent soul, and then it's like the enlightenment, and like the kind of logical way that it seems to be is you build a body, then you work with usually the Dantian area, lower Dantian, excuse me. Then it's the root, which is like the generative areas, right? And then you go upwards again. Now, in my experience of just like life in general and also alchemy and all that, I found that it's like you got to build things up from the base, right? More or less. You make money and then you invest that money down and eventually get to a point where you can start rising. I remember, maybe 5 years ago or something, I was really working on the lower body a lot. I was always building up the Jing, the lower dantian, right, the essence of the body. Then you build enough, and then you can go lower into like the inner generative areas, right? And you build it up. And then eventually, once you've built enough up, it actually just naturally rises. And now I'm kind of at that middle, as I said, the middle social level, right? Because there's the upper intellectual level, the middle of the brain, the middle social level of like the heart, and the chest, and all the organs in the chest, abdomen region, and then there's like the lower physical level of the storage organs, or right, or the excretory organs and such. And I'm finding that the fusion of the five elements is essentially your five like organs in like the chest region, right? That the rib cage region. And the kidneys seem to relate to the lower body. If you focus on the heart, it seems to. If you get like head pains, you get like sore head, like a sore head. I remember I would always, every time I get sick, my head starts to get sore. And then there's like that old idea of like you would focus on your head, like the top of your head, to not get sick, right? And like, or you would eat really spicy food because it would make the energy go up, and that would like flush it away, and you wouldn't get a cold. Um, But I would notice that like my body would be fairly strong. I mean, you know, it wouldn't be as strong, but it was just my head. Like my head would be horrible when I'd really get like a bad flu or whatever. So the heart, if you focus on the heart, like you do it right now, just in between the chest and kind of the upper chest region, in between like the nipples, in that like location, right, and then a little bit up, and you'll feel like your brain, like the upper brain. I relate it to the Aries, right? The Aries is the brain, the upper head starts to kind of like flush out, and it's like good, yeah. And the lungs, I think, is related to the jaw and the throat, and also the lungs, right? Like that's a metal element. So the heart's the fire, and the kidneys is the water. So it's like the upper head and lower head, like Aries and Taurus, right? And also technically Taurus and Gemini would both be the air for this case, right? And then it would be like, so I guess Leo and Aries would be the fire. Wow, maybe I should look into the astrology of this, man. It's probably all there relating. And I guess technically you would have like, you know, never mind, I'm going on. So that leaves the other two organs. Now, the stomach or the earth element seems to relate to the like solar plexus, you know, upper abdomen or lower abdominal, upper belly region. So that's like they say it's a center. The earth element is the center, right? The center of all the other elements, which is kind of like, you know, the center of the fusion process. So that would leave the wood or the liver, the wood element, which would, I guess in this case, it would have to be the lower the kind of lower mid body. By that I mean like the belly region, you know, because if the genital and like the pelvic region is water, then the belly region above that would have to be wood, I guess. There's an interesting saying which is that wood wants to rise but it cannot, and metal wants to fall but it cannot, because metal is yin in the yang realm. You know, realm meaning like area or space or location, because it's up in, you know, it's in the upper chest, right? It's, you know, I relate it to the sky. The sky kind of wants to fall, but it can't. The sun is pretty happy up. You know, the fire element rises and it wants to rise, right? The water element falls and it wants to fall. Water always falls, right? It just sinks down as deep as it can usually, unless it has a container. So the wood, which I guess if you think about trees want to rise, but they are limited by the base, you know, like it's the earth that they're in, so to speak. So that's something to think about, because I think the wood is, I guess it would be in the yin area, but it's yang. So it's wood is a contrast to metal. Metal is, it wants to fall. It's yin, but in the yang, and so like, and then the heart is pure yang. It rises. Your fire rises, right? Heat rises, and then cold goes lower, water falls, water is yin, pure yin. So then earth is in the middle. So the fusion of the five elements would essentially be focusing on all of these in like the mid-torso region, and like harmonizing them and healing them. And of course, everyone usually has a deficiency of some of these. To understand your deficiencies, if you have like a lot of, I guess, a lot of anger and a lack of growth, it would be like wood issues. If you have too much stimulation, you could have issues with fire. Or it's cold, I guess, maybe. If you're really dry, maybe you're very thin, you don't have much fat, it'd be an issue with water. No generative force, you know. If you have like intellectual or disability speaking and breathing problems, it could be an air issue, right? Or a lack of like morality and ethics and upstandingness and that kind of stuff. And if you have like issues with the grounding, actually, grounding and your nervous system's overstimulated and all crazy and all that stuff, like people who have like a lot of like mental issues and such, or just nervous system issues, it can be a lack of earth. So earth, it kind of stabilizes and grounds. Even though it's the center, it's technically not the root. You'd think the root would be stabilizing and grounding, but I guess, I don't know. I guess earth grounds things. So, earth grounds trees and it holds water. And yeah, I don't know. Think about it that way. I mean, hypothetically, you could relate earth to the root of the body, I guess, as well, and then water to the belly region, and that would make wood the core. Maybe I need to think about that. That kind of makes more logical sense. You could also relate Earth to the belly region. I don't know. I got to think about this and fully understand it. But you get the point, right? We all have deficiencies and different organs and different or elements, and different elements are stronger in certain people, right? You have a stronger element if you're really like energetic and outgoing. You're a fire person. If you're really intellectual and artistic and maybe intelligent or well spoken, like harmonious and well spoken and very law abiding. You're very metal. If you're very stubborn and rigid and just a really hard worker and you're just really stable and you're just like the core of the central pillar of your community or your family or whatever, you're very earthly. If you're very like outgoing and almost like Sagittarian, like you'd want to go out and travel and adventure and like alpha, it's very alpha almost. But it can also be like the person who's like the leader and the manager. That's more like wood, growth energy, right? And then if you're very like kind of mysterious and wise and or very good at like healing and caring and like all that kind of stuff, it's very psychic. That's water, right? Metal is the most rare, followed by water. Earth is, I think, the most common, followed by fire, and then wood's kind of in the middle in terms of rarity of these. Anyway, then finally the last point is on external alchemy. So the Taoists would usually take 5 different minerals which would relate to the 5 elements. You can look up like cold food powder and just look up like the stuff in the Baozi. I just released a copy of it. They have the recipes. It's like usually they would like have like cinnabar, azurite, azurite, copper. They would have some kind of like a lead mineral. They would have like magnetite. Magnetite would be like the black, related to, technically in this case, a water element, even though it's iron. But when it's in its magnetite form, it's yin actually. It's a kidney tonic. And then Realgar, which I think was related to, I don't know, fire element, or I think whatever form, because they have Orpiment, the yellow one, is related to earth element, maybe, I don't know. And then Realgar would be like fire or wood or something. So they would have like 5 minerals, and then they would usually use like water, like I think water, and then they would use like alum, which is alum stone, alumina, ammonium alumina chloride or something, and sometimes like niter, potassium nitrate and all this stuff. So a lot of this stuff would act as like redox reaction chemicals, and it would pretty much like, I guess along with the water, it would make some kind of like acidic environment to dissolve these minerals and such. And I was just thinking that it relates, and they would seal it up in a vessel, right? And they would heat it for like days and days and days on end, and then they would take it and ride the dragon, quote unquote. And the Jade Maidens would come, they would hear trumpets, and they would dance with fairies in the magical realm, so to speak, if you get what I'm saying. So essentially, the inner elixir is like the same thing. The body is the vessel, right? So a stronger body means a stronger vessel because you can hold more liquor, so to speak, inside of it. The water is your inner essence, the jing of the lower dantian, right? The fire is your mind, your heart and your mind, because it's the will and the focus. The focus in the body allows for things to start like stimulating and heating and all that. So I guess fusion of like, the yin and the yang is the mind and the essence coming together, right? And then the 5 minerals of the body is the 5 what do you call it, organs, and I related it to Western alchemy with the body being salt. Or, I mean, I don't know, maybe you could say the minerals, 5 minerals being salt as well. Depends how you want to see it. The mind being sulfur, because it's the fire. Though, I mean, you could also relate the mind to Mercury as well, depends, because maybe the mind is the one dissolving everything. So, it's a little bit here and there. And then, of course, the essence as the water. Technically, you could relate the essence to the soul as well, but so you got these three things: the body, the form, the mind, the thing that stimulates, and then the essence, which is the water, and of course the thing you're working on, which is those 5 minerals relating to the 5 elements. And you could instead have like 7 minerals relating to 7 elements, or 3, or I don't know. I mean, I probably could do that. I don't know. Maybe keep it as 5 just to keep the tradition, whatever. But the point is, that's kind of how the process of inner alchemy works, and it relates to outer alchemy, doing it in the laboratory and such. And there's many different methods and ways and ingredients, and you don't have to use these crazy things that the Chinese alchemists use. You can just use plants and whatever you want. Maybe even if you want to use minerals, you can use different things as well, things that are a bit more palatable to a Westerner, maybe, if you want to. This isn't really about external alchemy right now. This is more about the internal. So that's the level 2 is like the fusion of the 5 elements, right? And I'm kind of going through that right now. I'm fusing my 5 elements or something. I'm kind of trying to balance them out and work with them, right? So I'm really wondering, like, what happened next. And of course, I imagine I have a little sneak peek preview of what happens next, which is you work with the mind, I would imagine, right? You do the ascension in the mind, the head, and I imagine that just like so essentially going beyond the 5 elements is almost like going beyond your astrology. And the magicians would talk about how you eventually transcend astrology and you just do what you want, right? You become formless, the same way that the Taoist alchemists would say once you take the elixir, the external elixir, I mean, because they would say, if you your root, which if you get a Bazi chart, Bazi, which is Chinese astrology chart, you'll have a root. It's called the Day Master. The Day Master is kind of like your base of who you are. I don't know if they call it spirit base or if that'd just be the root of the body, but it's almost like the original, the most kind of raw thing of you. Very, very influencing the rest of your life, right? If you had a certain root, which is the Day Master, if you had a fire Day Master, you wouldn't take water-based medicines or supplements or elixirs or whatever, because it's like it would dampen the fire, right? So you don't take the one that controls it. Or if you have a metal, you wouldn't take fire-based stuff because it would harm that, right? And they Chinese astrologers say that anyway. Just keep away from the element that's not very good for you. Of course, it's a little more nuanced. We all have different charts, different interactions and such. So you got to kind of take it as it's meant to be. But they would say once you take the elixir, you don't have to ever worry about that because it would like harmonize everything and you would transcend it. And I think basically what that means is that you think of it like this way. We're born with a certain astrology, right? We're born with a certain physiognomy. Our organs are weak or strong depending on your genetics, firstly, and then also astrology and location and all these other things. But naturally, you'll kind of just grow a certain way, and you can change it and you can improve certain things. I remember when I was young, I could never I had horrible issues growing muscles and doing physical things, and eventually just years and years and years of training, and finally now I can grow muscles to an extent, and that's, I guess, having a weak earth element, and now the earth element's stronger. It's like if someone had intellectual disabilities when they were younger, and then they got better, and now they're more intelligent, right? So it's all these different things. So you can overcome your weaknesses, and I guess the elixir would essentially do that. It would fix all the issues, and that's what becoming immortal, you would assume, is this perfect elemental internal harmony and just like leveling up beyond the issues of the five elements. And the issues of the five elements, the middle realm, is very related to the social sphere of reality, to society, right? It's a bit like when I go on the internet and everyone's complaining about all these valid problems. I can look at that and be like, oh, geez, yeah, that is true. That's horrible, isn't it? But if I do it too much, it's just very draining. So it's like I have to transcend and ascend beyond the realms of the common man, right? So it's like I can't spend all this time socializing, or well, that's like a form of pseudo-socializing. But I guess for people who talk with others too much, maybe it's not a bad idea to transcend, that if it's like eating up all your time or whatever, right? And I guess that's what then going into the next level of the mind, essentially becoming the architect, becoming like a sage, an enlightened one, would be, is that you start to control your own destiny, you start to navigate your own ship. It's a bit like, all right, so I'll put it this way. Imagine you are in a dockyard, like you're on a coast or something, and there's like a broken boat. Maybe like think of it this way. You're like you're on an island and there's a broken boat and you're living off coconuts and fish and whatever, and you're stranded, and you say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to fix this boat, and you start fixing it with coconuts and palm trees and I don't know, whatever. Maybe you cook sand into glass, and you cook things into like resin or something. You start fixing up the boat. That's like the lowest level, level 1, right? And then level 2 is maybe you start sailing around and you meet other people and you start learning how to sail and you start building a name for yourself as like some kind of trader or a pirate or something. And then level 3 is like you just know everything. You've transcended the world. You got all the money you need. You just do whatever you want. You just wander around the 7 seas. You've conquered the lands. You know all the fish. You know all the corals. You know all the seas, all the trade routes. You do whatever you want. It's like playing in creative mode, right? So level 1 is like when you start a game of Minecraft and you don't know anything. You start getting blown up by creepers and you get shot at by the skeletons and the zombies start eating you, and it's nighttime and it's like, oh shit, I better build a little hole in the ground to wait out. And you build your little hut, and then level 2 is you like start learning everything and you start improving all your gear, and you find some of those villages. And what do you even do with the villages now? I haven't played in ages. I think you steal their bread or wheat and make it into bread, and you start farming and do all this crap. And then eventually number 3 is kind of when you start getting bored of the game, because like you've just conquered everything. If you're playing with friends or whatever, you guys have just conquered everything. You've blown up half the map, mining it or whatever. Now you start building weird things like temples and redstone computers and whatever nonsense. You start like installing mods where you can program Lua on a little computer, and it's just like I guess that's the higher level or something. I don't know. What is beyond that? I guess people choose to transcend to another game, another reality, maybe if they want. Some people choose to stay. Some people enjoy the world. It's really up to you. If you want to, I guess, if you want to indulge in the lower body, the middle body, the world of socializing, the world of the different organs, instead of being in that pure white bliss, transcendent state of infinite peace, you choose to enter the world of your own accord, which is energy going down into matter, right? And you choose to play around and you do stuff, right? Like it's like the butterfly effect. You just push a wave and it ripples, and if you want to do that, right? And of course, I guess life is cyclical, so you're like eternally going through this cycle of up and down and like rebirth and all that stuff. But I don't know, eventually you probably just harmonize the cycle and like something like that. So that's my assumption of how things work. Yeah, otherwise it's like prestiging and Call of Duty where you go back to level 1, but you have all your gear and you get that'd be kind of like moving to another country or taking on a new job or whatever it happens to be. But and then whatever happens internally would be fascinating to replicate that. Sure. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about tonight. So, the process of ascension, as always. I guess we'll see. I will tell you once I thoroughly think I've hit that upper level. I've done that fusion of the 5 elements, harmonized them. We'll see what happens,